Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're walking in Memphis. The topic of this Walking in Memphis, USWA Wrestling from April 26, 1997. Let's jump right into this. First we get to see special guest commentator for the entire show will be Miss Stacy, aka The Cat, aka at the time I believe Jerry Lawler's wife. We go into and if you haven't seen my shows before, we rate everything on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 is the worst, 5 is the best. Also, if you want to watch a video I watched for this, it'll be down here in the comments, so check that out. You can pause this, go watch that, come back, see what my review, see if it matches up with what you think. First match of the show, we get TD Steele and Tony Williams going up against the Truth Commission, who for this match is going to be Recon, aka Bull Buchanan, and Tank, and I forget who Tank was under the mask, but he was a massive dude. This was an okay match. Recon and Tank pick up a really quick win here. After that, and I do rate everything based on the segment, not just the match. After that, we get the Commandant, who was the leader of the Truth Commission, comes out and he calls out Mike Samples, who previously was supposed to help the Truth Commission, but there was a mix-up, which then Samples and the Commandant start getting in a little bit of a verbal interaction here, which brings out the Truth Commission, which Samples kind of weasels out of. Overall, I thought this was okay. At very best, I'm giving it a 2. Not the greatest of opener. Truth Commission, if anybody remembers them from WWF or even USWA, they really weren't great. Recon, Bull Buchanan's probably the best of the group. Kurgan, the Intimidator, I believe he was called in the Truth Commission, is okay for a giant, but still not the greatest. I mean, Great Khali's probably a better wrestler than he was. Now, going from that, we get to see a video of Brian Christopher getting attacked by the Spellbinder and Bloody Ox Brody, who was a guy in a mask, which... funny, they're obviously a takeoff on Ox Baker and Bruiser Brody. Again, was an okay little video. After that, we get to see Bloody Ox Brody versus Tony Martelli. I almost called him Tony Montana. This is a glorified squash match here. Afterwards, TD Steele and Tony Williams both come out. They get squashed as well. Brody goes down. Brody does pick up the win. He goes down and he goes to cut a promo in there. His promo, I think, was actually good, and I kind of enjoyed the build-up here. It kind of felt like they were building him almost like a Big Van Vader type wrestler. I don't really remember Bloody Ox Brody. He must not have been a long-time addition here, but if you remember him, if you know what he did after or before, or who was under the mask, let me know in the comments. Same with Tank. If you know who was under the Tank mask, let me know in the comments. Overall, I'm giving this segment a 3. I thought it was good. It was better than the start of the show, so we're building a little bit. From that, we get an interview that starts off with Dutch Mantel, who brings out his friend Bill Dundee, two of the greats of Memphis wrestling. They do a little bit of interview talking about how they're teaming up and how they want to get rid of all the young punks in USWA, which leads us to a match with Bill Dundee versus a guy named Jerry Faith. Dundee picks up the win in that. Dundee made the guy look great. Dundee's a great wrestler. Dutch and Dundee together are two of the greatest talkers in Memphis history, two of the biggest icons in Memphis wrestling history. I've said it before and I'll say it again, Dutch Mantel is my favorite Memphis-based wrestler, him and Eddie Gilbert. I thought this was really good. I did say Dundee did pick up the win. I'm giving that whole thing a 4. Next up, we get an interview with King Reginald, who has Queenie with him, and King Reginald is Reggie B. Fine. Queenie, I believe, also went by Queen Moesha, but I could be wrong. I could be just misremembering or combining two women that were both associated with Reggie B. Fine. He's talking about being the champion and how he beat Lawler, which brings out Jerry the King Lawler. This was a great back and forth segment between the two. Reggie B. Fine, aka King Reginald here, isn't really talked about, but he is a great talker. A lot of people don't really remember him. He was mostly a Memphis guy. He didn't really do anything on a bigger stage, so a lot of people don't know of his work. I think he's absolutely fantastic. To me, the King Reginald character, or Reggie B. Fine at times, kind of had that, and I hate to say it this way, like that pimp swagger to him, kind of like what you would see with The Godfather later on. Took a lot of what you would hear in the old 3-6 Mafia albums that came out around this time. A lot of their vernacular, a lot of the way that they talked, if you watch their old interviews, obviously they're from Memphis too, that they had a lot of that Reggie B. Fine styling to them, and he had a lot of that same thing, which I'm willing to bet is a regional thing, the regional dialect, regional slang. He carried it over. I thought it was awesome. I'm giving that thing a 4, that whole piece of work. That interview was one whole segment. And then we go from that, we get a Endrick Hines versus a returning Paul Diamond. Paul Diamond, another underrated wrestler, someone that probably should have got way more than he did. Diamond does pick up the win here, which then goes right into an interview with Paul Diamond, who he's talking about he came there to help out his friend Timothy Dunn, which then brings out the Truth Commission to kind of bully Diamond, but then Dunn comes out, who you may know as part of our Well Done or Timothy Doll. He wrestled as both. The Truth Commission come out, Dunn's there. Basically, Diamond says, hey, that was a warm-up match. If any of you guys want to go, let's get in the ring right now. Which brings Recon into the ring, who is also Bull Buchanan. We get a match with Diamond and Recon. This was a really good match. This was really fun. Juxtaposed against what I seen in the beginning, Recon looked 100% better here, and it's because he's in the ring with a guy like Paul Diamond. And Diamond does pick up the win here. I'm giving this one a 4. I thought it was a really good way to reintroduce Paul Diamond, a guy who had been in Memphis previously. Also, you kind of got a better vibe of the Truth Commission. They felt more dangerous being in there against a guy with the talent of Paul Diamond. Now, coming from that, we get a promo from Jerry the King Lawler. Absolutely stellar. It's Jerry the King Lawler. How can you not? I don't think I've ever seen a bad Jerry Lawler promo. There's some cringy ones where it hasn't held up over time with the stuff he's saying, but they're not bad. Overall, I've only seen great promos. It's kind of like Dr. D. David Schultz. Dr. D has a lot of old promos that are very, very cringy and would not work today because of the subject matter, but he's absolutely compelling. And Lawler's the same way. Lawler on a different level. Lawler is on the, when you're talking about purely talkers, Lawler is on the level where like The Rock is, where Ric Flair is, where Terry Funk is. He's in the short list of the all-time greats. Going from that, we get an interview with, or a promo with Brian Christopher, who basically says at the time he's a face and he's going to go back to his heel ways because he's been getting screwed around a lot, which is, in a way, it keeps him as a babyface with a heel. It's a whole thing. Kind of like a tweener, but he's still being treated as a babyface. That leads us right into a match with Mike Samples, Hollywood Mike Samples versus Brian Christopher. Christopher does pick up the win when Bloody Ox Brody and the Spellbinder come down, which brings out Timothy Dunn and Paul Diamond to run him off. I'm going to give that one a 4 for that segment. I mean, probably should give it a 5. You got Brian Christopher and Jerry Lawler. The match and the after was what took it down a bit for me. But other than that, it was fantastic. And finally, the final segment of the night, we get Bill Dundee and Dutch Mantel coming out and doing an interview again, which they talk about Diamond and Dunn, which brings out Diamond and Dunn. We end up with a little bit of well, first it was Dundee, and then he brought out Dunn, and then Dutch came out, and then it was the whole thing. We end up with a brawl, which is pretty much what gets breaking up. That's what ends out the show. I'm giving that final segment a 4 as well. I thought it was really good. Overall, the show started slow, but picked up really fast. You started to get some really good stuff after about the first couple segments. The rest of the show was fantastic. Overall, I'm going to give the show a 4. I thought it was a really fun watch. Power through the video that I have down here and watch this. I know there is some issues with the video it came from. If you remember VHS tapes, first of all, make sure to check your prostate, check your heart, all that good stuff. Anyway, if you remember VHS tapes, you remember when they had tracking issues where they would have static on the bottom or somewhere on the tape. In this, you could see the tracking, the static on the bottom of it which was probably a tape that's either been played a lot or been taped over multiple times for those of you that don't know what may have caused that. For those of us old enough to remember what did cause it, that's usually what caused it. Either it was a cheap tape, it was stored bad, or it played a lot and it degraded, or you recorded over on that tape over and over again, which also would degrade it. Overall, the video quality is not great, but the show itself is pretty dang good. I'm giving the show a 4. Again, overall, I thought it was really good. If you made it all the way to the end, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't, share the video. And if you made it to the end, let me know you made it to the end. Let's put the cat in the comments for Stacy Carter, who made it, who was the guest commentator through the whole show. She didn't really say much, but she sat there the whole show. Let's put the cat in the comments. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and we've been walking in Memphis.